Have you ever wondered how one small garage could change the entire world? This is the story of how Apple was born, from nothing but a dream, fear, and a stubborn refusal to give up. Let's step into that moment together. In the mid-1970s, the world of computers was cold, intimidating, and far from personal. Big machines filled entire rooms, owned by corporations and universities, not by people like you and me. It felt unreachable, almost untouchable. Now imagine being a young man in that era, barely out of high school, without a college degree, with parents who had no idea what a personal computer even meant. That was Steve Jobs' reality. Ordinary. Uncertain. Small. He didn't have money, power, or a clear roadmap. What he had was curiosity, a restless kind that made him question why technology had to be so distant from everyday life. Why couldn't it fit on a desk? Why couldn't it be beautiful? Most people didn't even ask those questions. They just accepted the world as it was. But heroes? Heroes start by seeing a gap that others ignore. And Steve's gap wasn't just technical, it was emotional. He wanted connection. But here's the thing, curiosity is exciting at first, yet terrifying when you realize what it demands. It demands leaving safety. It demands saying, "What if I try?" Even when no one believes in you. Have you ever felt that? Steve met Steve Wozniak, a shy electronics genius who loved building circuits for fun. Together, they didn't just dream, they started sketching, soldering, and wiring. In Woz's hands, computers stopped being theory. They became alive. But they had nothing, no office, no investors, not even proper tools. Just a small garage, a few borrowed parts, and endless nights fueled by soda, adrenaline, and the belief that they were building something bigger than themselves. And here's a lesson: you don't need perfect conditions to start. You need action. Too many people wait for the right time. Jobs didn't wait. He sold his Volkswagen van. Woz sold his calculator. That was their first investment. Ask yourself, what could you sacrifice today to create the future you want? Maybe it's not a car or a gadget, but time, comfort, or even the fear of looking foolish. Because the first step is never easy. It's always uncomfortable. Imagine them there, two kids surrounded by wires, unsure if anyone would care about their Apple I machine. But every line of code, every screw they tightened, was a silent act of faith. They were betting on tomorrow. This is where heroes are born, not in moments of applause but in those lonely, messy nights when no one is watching. The world doesn't reward you yet. It doesn't even notice you. And that's when most people quit. But Steve didn't quit. He couldn't. He had a vision, a future where technology wasn't just for experts, it was for everyone. A computer that felt human. He didn't just want to sell a machine. He wanted to change lives. Maybe yours. So here's your first takeaway. If you feel ordinary, broke, or unnoticed, that doesn't mean you're stuck. It means you're in your garage phase. And the garage phase is where revolutions begin, if you choose to keep going. What's your garage? The small, unglamorous place where your dream is quietly waiting for you to start? Will you ignore it, or will you step in tonight, even if no one claps? Because every empire begins in silence. If you want to build your own Apple, start small but start now. Don't wait for the perfect idea, the perfect moment, or the perfect team. Just pick up your version of a soldering iron and do the first thing today. We've only just entered their story. The challenge is coming. The failures, the near disasters, the moments when everything almost collapsed, that's where the transformation begins. And that's where your lesson deepens. Success stories often skip the hardest part, the point where dreams collide with reality. Apple wasn't a company yet. It was just two guys in a garage. And soon the world would test if their belief was strong enough to survive. Steve Jobs could see the future so clearly, but convincing others to see it too? That was a different battle. When he tried to explain the Apple I, most people laughed. Why would anyone need a computer in their house? They asked. Think about that for a moment. Today, you're likely watching this on a phone, a computer more powerful than anything in the 70s. But back then, a personal computer sounded as strange as owning your own spaceship. The few who didn't laugh still doubted. They said it was too risky, too niche, too expensive. That's the thing about early dreams. They feel obvious to you, but invisible to everyone else. Have you felt that kind of isolation? Steve and Woz had a working machine, but no money to build more. Each board cost cash they didn't have. And without a way to sell them, they'd be stuck with a prototype no one wanted. This was their first big wall. Here's where most people stop, they think. I guess the world isn't ready. But Steve didn't wait for readiness. He went out and asked for help, even when rejection stung. He pitched to friends, local stores, anyone who'd listen. Finally, a small computer shop called the Byte Shop agreed to buy 50 units. Great news, right? But there was a catch. They wanted assembled computers, not just kits. That meant Apple had to build them before getting paid. That's like someone saying, I'll buy your dream, but only if you risk everything first. Would you have said yes? Steve did. He promised delivery without knowing where to get the money. He bet on himself completely. Here's a practical lesson. Sometimes opportunity doesn't come wrapped in comfort. It comes with conditions that scare you. And the question is, will you let fear decide, or will you find a way, even if you don't know how yet? Steve hustled. He borrowed parts on credit, begged suppliers to trust him, and convinced friends to help assemble boards by hand. The garage turned into a tiny factory. Soldering irons hissed. Deadlines loomed. Sleep vanished. Picture that scene, stacks of parts, loud music to keep energy up, friends working all night, hands burned from soldering. No guarantees. No certainty. Just pure commitment. That's what starting really looks like. And here's something you can use. When you face a goal that feels impossible, break it down. Steve didn't say, we need 50 computers. He said, we need one. Then another. Then another. Big dreams are built board by board. Ask yourself, are you trying to solve your whole future at once? Stop. Solve today's board. Finish today's task. That's how impossible things become possible, not with one huge leap, but with small, relentless steps. When the first batch was finally done, Apple delivered. The Byte Shop paid them. For the first time, Steve and Woz had proof. Their crazy idea had value. It wasn't just a dream anymore. It was real. And it worked. But here's the truth. This small victory didn't make life easier, it made the stakes higher. Bigger dreams mean bigger risks. Apple's journey was only beginning, and soon, the pressure would nearly crush them. Success can be dangerous because it tricks you into thinking the hardest part is over. For Steve Jobs and Apple, the first sale was just the beginning. What came next wasn't celebration, it was chaos. And it could have ended everything. Orders started coming in, and with each one, the garage became smaller, messier, and hotter. Soldering fumes filled the air, cardboard boxes stacked to the ceiling, and every surface became a workbench. It was a victory that felt like pressure. Have you ever reached a goal only to realize it demanded more from you than you expected? That's what growth does. It doesn't feel like comfort. It feels like running faster while the ground beneath you starts to shake. Steve Jobs wanted Apple to be bigger than a hobby. He wanted to compete with the big companies, IBM, Hewlett-Packard. But Apple wasn't even a company yet. It was a few young people working for free, eating cheap pizza, and trying not to collapse. And here's a lesson: dreams attract people, but they also test who's serious. Some friends left when the late nights never stopped. Others doubted Steve's vision. Not everyone who starts with you will stay. Are you ready for that? Jobs had to do something uncomfortable. He needed to turn Apple into a real business. That meant contracts, investors, and serious money. And for a young man who hated rules, that was terrifying. But without it, Apple would die. Here's a practical takeaway: your passion alone won't carry you forever. At some point, you need systems, structure, and help from people who know what you don't. Are you willing to learn what you fear most? Steve started pitching to venture capitalists, wealthy investors in Silicon Valley. Most of them didn't just say no. They dismissed him as arrogant, unprepared, even crazy. Rejection after rejection hit him like heavy doors slamming shut. But here's the truth: if you want to do something extraordinary, you must get comfortable hearing no 100 times before one yes. The question is, will you keep knocking, or will you turn back to safety? Finally, one investor, Mike Markkula, saw what others didn't. He believed in Steve's vision and offered not just money but mentorship. With his help, Apple became an official company in 1976. It was no longer just two kids in a garage. Think about this: one person's belief can change your entire life. But you have to meet them halfway by showing persistence before they ever arrive. Are you doing the work that would make someone want to help you? Apple now had funding, but that didn't solve everything. With money came pressure, deadlines, and expectations. Mistakes suddenly mattered more. Each success raised the bar higher. And that's where the next big crisis would hit. Rapid growth feels exciting, until it begins to break what you've built. Apple was no longer a garage project. It had money, employees, and real customers. But with that came something Steve Jobs wasn't ready for: failure on a bigger stage. The Apple I had sold, yes. But to survive, they needed a new product, something more powerful, more appealing, and less messy to build. That became the Apple II. It had to work perfectly. And it had to sell, or Apple was finished. Imagine the pressure: no safety net, no backup plan. Everything Steve and Woz had sacrificed, sleep, friendships, their last dollars, now depended on a machine that didn't even exist yet. Can you feel that weight in your chest? And here's where the hero's journey hits its darkest valley, the part where things don't just get hard, they nearly collapse. For Apple, that moment came with technical failures, production problems, and an industry that didn't take them seriously. Steve was a visionary, but he wasn't an engineer like Woz. That gap caused tension. Jobs wanted beauty, marketing, and bold promises. Woz wanted stability, practicality, and patience. Their differences began to spark conflict. Have you ever wanted something so badly that you pushed people around you too hard? That's what Steve did. He demanded perfection. He yelled. He made people cry. In his mind, there was no room for good enough. Only great. But there's a lesson here: obsession can build greatness, but if unchecked, it can also destroy relationships and trust. Are you pushing yourself, or others, so hard that you're burning the very bridge you need to cross? As prototypes failed and money drained, Apple faced its first true crisis. Suppliers wanted payments they couldn't make. Deadlines slipped. Investors grew nervous. And in those sleepless nights, even Steve asked himself, what if we fail? This is a critical point for any dreamer. When you feel like quitting, your mind will list every reason to walk away: logic, fear, exhaustion. But quitting doesn't remove pain. It only replaces the pain of effort with the pain of regret. Here's what Steve did instead: he adapted. He learned to delegate tasks he wasn't good at. He brought in experts who knew what he didn't. He stopped trying to control every wire and started leading the vision instead. You can apply that right now. If you're stuck, ask yourself, what am I trying to do alone that I could do better with help? Pride will whisper, you don't need anyone. Ignore it. Growth is a team sport, not a solo act. The Apple II eventually launched in 1977. It wasn't perfect. But it worked, and it looked friendly, colorful, even fun, something no other computer had done. It became a hit, pulling Apple out of crisis and into the spotlight. And here's the emotional shift: the same people who doubted them now called them geniuses. The same investors who almost walked away now wanted more. That's the reward for not quitting: you get to prove your own doubts wrong. The Apple II wasn't just a product, it was a phenomenon. Schools wanted it. Hobbyists loved it. Suddenly, Apple wasn't a struggling garage project anymore. It was a growing company, earning millions. But success doesn't just lift you, it tests you. Steve Jobs went from a barefoot kid soldering boards to a CEO speaking to reporters, negotiating with investors, and hiring employees he had to lead. That's not just a new job. That's a new identity. And not everyone can handle that shift. Have you ever achieved something you wanted, only to feel overwhelmed by what came with it? That's what success often does. It hands you responsibilities you didn't train for, and it forces you to grow faster than you're ready. Apple now had dozens of employees, but Steve still acted like it was his garage. He micromanaged, demanded impossible standards, and dismissed people who disagreed with him. Some admired his intensity. Others feared him. Here's the truth: what gets you started won't always get you to the next level. The stubbornness that helped you fight through early doubt can turn into the very thing that holds you back if you don't evolve. Are you evolving? As Apple grew, competitors started to notice. IBM, the giant Steve had once dreamed of challenging, was now stepping into the personal computer market. Apple wasn't just a quirky startup anymore. It was in a war it could easily lose. Steve realized they needed something revolutionary, not just good. He wanted a computer that wasn't just functional but magical, one that anyone, even a child, could use without fear. That vision would eventually lead to the Macintosh. But big visions come with big costs. Developing the Macintosh would take years, burn through millions, and stretch the company to its limit. Some board members thought it was reckless. They wanted safer, easier profits. This is where many people compromise. They stop dreaming big because others call them unrealistic. Have you ever felt that pressure, to shrink your dreams so it feels safer for everyone else? Would you have done it? Steve didn't. He doubled down. He believed that making computers friendlier and more beautiful wasn't just a feature, it was the future. And he was willing to risk everything for it. Even his job. Even his place at Apple. Here's your lesson: when you step into a bigger stage, you'll face a choice. Do you protect what you've gained, or do you risk it to reach something greater? Comfort whispers, "You've done enough." Vision whispers, "Not yet." But taking that leap requires preparation. You can't just want more, you have to become the person who can handle more. Steve started studying design, marketing, leadership, skills he didn't have before. He knew vision alone wasn't enough. You can do the same. List one skill you need for the next version of your life. Maybe it's communication, financial planning, or discipline. Don't wait until you have to learn it. Start now. Growth doesn't happen under pressure, it happens in practice. As Apple pushed forward, Steve's dream was about to collide with reality in a way he didn't expect. The next chapter wouldn't be about creating a product, it would be about surviving a storm that could destroy everything. By the early 1980s, Apple was soaring. The Apple II had changed the game and built a loyal following. But with success came tension. The pressure to deliver bigger, better products pushed the company, and Steve, into new, dangerous territory. The Macintosh project was ambitious, secretive, and expensive. Steve poured himself into it with a fiery passion, pushing his team beyond exhaustion. He demanded perfection but often ignored the limits of people around him. Have you ever felt so sure of your vision that you forgot to listen to others? Steve's confidence turned into stubbornness, and his leadership style alienated key players. The team split between those who supported him and those who feared his intensity. At the same time, Apple's board and investors grew impatient. They wanted profits, stability, and less risk. But Steve was driven by innovation, not by quarterly numbers. The clash between vision and business reality was becoming impossible to ignore. Then came the boardroom battle. Apple's board decided that Steve's management style was harming the company. In a painful twist, they forced him out of the very company he had created. Imagine that, losing control of your dream. If you've ever been pushed out of your own project, dream, or team, you know how devastating it feels. It's like being rejected by your own heart. Steve's story shows that even heroes face the darkest moments. But this crisis would spark his transformation. Here's a crucial lesson: failure and rejection don't define you. What defines you is what you do next. After Apple, Steve could have given up. Instead, he chose to learn, grow, and come back stronger. What practical step can you take when life pushes you down? Steve didn't sit idle. He started new ventures, bought Pixar, and expanded his skills. He didn't wait for a comeback, he prepared for it. What's your next move? This is the moment where many people lose hope, but it's also the moment where true heroes begin their rise. Steve's story reminds us, sometimes you must fall before you can fly higher than ever before. Steve Jobs was out of Apple, the company he co-founded. Imagine the pain, the doubt, feeling like your life's work was ripped away. Yet, in that darkness, something powerful began to grow: resilience. This is where true heroes transform. Instead of quitting, Steve did something rare: he started over. He founded Next, a new computer company aimed at creating powerful machines for higher education and business. It wasn't an easy road. Funding was tight. The market was competitive. But Steve didn't just build computers, he built a new mindset. He learned lessons from his failure at Apple: how to listen better, how to balance vision with patience. He wasn't just recreating the past. He was forging a new path. At the same time, he bought Pixar from George Lucas. Many thought it was a risky move, an animation studio? But Steve saw something else: a story-driven company with endless potential. His belief in creativity wasn't just about tech, it was about connecting with people emotionally. What can you learn here? When you lose one dream, don't rush to replace it with a copy. Instead, ask, what new dream can I build from my experience? How can I grow, not just recover? Steve's story shows that reinvention isn't about erasing the past, it's about building on it. He combined technology, creativity, and leadership in new ways that would change industries beyond computers. Here's a practical tip: after a setback, don't just jump back into the same routine. Take time to reflect deeply. Ask yourself, what worked? What didn't? What new skills or attitudes do I need to develop? Write these down. Next computers didn't become mainstream, but they attracted attention for their design and innovation. The company's software became influential behind the scenes, especially at universities and corporations. Meanwhile, Pixar released Toy Story, the first fully computer-animated film, and it became a massive hit. Steve's gamble on creativity paid off spectacularly, proving that vision combined with patience can create magic. This phase teaches us about patience. Success isn't always immediate. Sometimes you plant seeds that won't bloom for years. Are you willing to wait and nurture your dream even when it seems distant? Steve's reinvention wasn't just about business. It was about growing emotionally and intellectually. It was about humility and openness, about preparing for the moment when the world was ready for him again. And that moment came sooner than anyone expected. Apple, struggling without him, needed what only Steve could give: vision, leadership, and a bold future. But Steve wouldn't just return as he was, he would return as a changed leader. After years away, Steve Jobs wasn't the same person who left Apple. He had grown wiser, tougher, and more focused. Meanwhile, Apple was struggling, losing money, losing customers, and losing direction. The company needed a hero. When Apple bought Next in 1996, it wasn't just an acquisition, it was a reunion. Steve returned, not as a visitor, but as a leader ready to steer Apple out of crisis. Imagine stepping back into a place you once built, only now it feels foreign and broken. Steve faced skepticism. Employees and investors doubted him. Could the man who had been pushed out really save the company? But Steve wasn't there to play it safe. He came back with a clear mission: to make Apple simple, innovative, and revolutionary again. The first step was tough: cutting projects, streamlining the team, and focusing on fewer but better products. Steve knew that trying to do too much led to failure. This was about quality over quantity. It was about vision, focus, and execution. Think about your own life. Are you spreading yourself too thin? What could happen if you focused on just one or two big priorities? Steve's comeback teaches us that clarity brings power. When you simplify, you make room for greatness. Steve also focused on design and user experience. He believed technology should be intuitive and beautiful, not just functional. That belief led to products that people loved to use, not just had to use. It changed the way the world interacts with technology. This was a huge lesson. Success isn't just about what you make, it's about how you make people feel. Are you creating something that connects emotionally? Or just something that works? By 1998, Apple launched the iMac, a colorful, stylish computer that stood out in a sea of dull machines. It was a hit. People wanted Apple products again. This wasn't luck. It was the result of Steve's vision, leadership, and relentless focus. But the real game changer was still coming. Steve was preparing to introduce products that would not just save Apple, but reshape entire industries. Products that would live in our pockets, on our wrists, and in our homes. Imagine the courage it takes to come back to a place that once rejected you, face doubt again, and still push forward with bold ideas. That's the heart of Steve Jobs' return, and the lesson for all of us. With Steve Jobs back at Apple, the company began a new chapter fueled by relentless innovation and bold ideas. But real transformation doesn't come from small steps, it comes from leaps into the unknown. Apple was ready to take those leaps. Steve pushed his teams to think differently. No longer was Apple just a computer company. It became a company about changing how people live, work, and communicate. The goal wasn't just to sell devices, it was to create experiences that inspired and connected. This is a moment to reflect. Are you thinking big enough? Are you aiming to change your world or just improve your comfort zone? Steve's vision reminds us that true success means challenging limits and imagining new possibilities. The first breakthrough was the iPod, launched in 2001, a tiny device that put thousands of songs in your pocket. It changed how we listened to music forever. People didn't just buy a gadget, they bought freedom, convenience, and joy. Think about that. The most powerful innovations solve real problems in simple ways. What problem in your life, or someone else's, could you solve with a simple but powerful idea? Next came the iPhone in 2007, a revolutionary smartphone combining a phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator in one device. It wasn't just a product, it was a cultural shift that redefined communication and technology. Remember, innovation requires risk. Many doubted the iPhone's success at first, but Steve's confidence never wavered. He believed deeply in the product's potential, even when the world was skeptical. Do you believe in your ideas enough to keep pushing despite doubt? Apple's approach combined design, functionality, and user experience in a way no one else did. They created products that people loved, not just tolerated. That emotional connection is what turns customers into fans. The lesson here is clear: create not just for profit, but to inspire. How can your work or passion create an emotional impact? How can you make someone's life better in a meaningful way? With each new product, the iPad, Apple Watch, and beyond, Apple didn't just expand its lineup. It expanded the way we live, communicate, and even think about technology. It turned dreams into realities. One of Apple's greatest secrets wasn't just innovation, it was focus. Steve Jobs famously said, "Deciding what not to do is as important as deciding what to do." In a world full of distractions, this lesson is priceless. Think about your own life and goals. Are you chasing too many things at once? Spreading yourself thin? Apple learned that focus means saying no to dozens of ideas so you can say yes to a few great ones. When Steve returned to Apple, he cut down their product line from 350 to just 10. It was a bold move. Less choice meant clearer messaging and better quality. Customers knew what Apple stood for: simplicity, elegance, and excellence. Here's a powerful question: what could happen if you simplified your projects, your daily routine, or your mindset? What would you gain if you stopped trying to do everything perfectly and instead did a few things really well? Apple's products are known for their clean design and intuitive interfaces. This wasn't accidental, it was the result of years spent removing unnecessary features and distractions, making technology accessible and enjoyable. Applying this to your own goals means breaking things down to essentials. What parts of your work or life can you cut out because they don't add real value? What's truly worth your time and energy? Steve also believed in focus when it came to teams and company culture. He hired people who were not just skilled but deeply passionate and aligned with Apple's vision. That's why every Apple product reflected a shared commitment to excellence. This focus on simplicity made Apple products feel effortless to use. It removed barriers and confusion. And when things are simple, people trust and love them more. Isn't that what we all want? To be trusted and loved for what we create? Here's a practical tip: try a focus audit today. Write down everything you're working on. Then ask, which 3 things matter most? Drop or delay the rest. Channel your energy where it counts. Remember, less is more. Focus doesn't limit you, it frees you to shine in what you do best. Apple's story is proof that mastering focus can transform a company and your life. Apple's success wasn't just about products, it was about people and culture. Steve Jobs understood that to create revolutionary products, he needed a team that shared his passion for excellence and innovation. Creating such a culture isn't easy. It demands clear vision, high standards, and sometimes tough decisions. Steve famously demanded the best work, pushing teams to reach heights they didn't know they could. But he also inspired them with his relentless passion. Ask yourself, what kind of culture surrounds your goals? Are the people and environment supporting your growth and creativity, or are they holding you back? Surrounding yourself with the right influences is key. Steve believed in hiring A players, people who not only had skills but cared deeply about the mission. This meant firing those who didn't fit, even if they were talented. Excellence requires tough choices. Here's a practical tip: evaluate your team, friends, or collaborators. Are they lifting you up or dragging you down? Sometimes, tough decisions are needed to protect your vision. Steve also fostered innovation by encouraging curiosity and risk-taking. He understood that mistakes were part of the process. Without a culture that embraces failure, true innovation is impossible. Think about your own projects. Are you afraid to make mistakes? What if you embraced failure as a step toward mastery? How would that change your approach and confidence? Apple's culture combined discipline with creativity. They weren't reckless, they were bold and thoughtful. That balance allowed Apple to innovate while delivering quality products that people trusted. The lesson: culture isn't just a buzzword. It's the foundation for everything you build. Nurture it intentionally. Lead by example. Inspire excellence and curiosity every day. Apple's rise wasn't just built on tech, it was built on storytelling. Steve Jobs understood that to connect with people, you have to tell a story that speaks to their hopes, fears, and dreams. It's not just what you sell, it's how you make people feel. Have you ever been drawn to a brand or product not because of what it did, but because of the story it told? That emotional connection creates loyalty that lasts longer than any advertisement. Steve was a master storyteller. Every Apple product launch was an event, a carefully crafted narrative where he didn't just describe features, he painted a vision of a better future. He invited people to be part of something bigger. Why does storytelling work so well? Because humans are wired for stories. They help us understand, remember, and believe. When you share your goals or ideas as stories, you make them real, not just to others, but to yourself too. Here's a practical strategy you can use: frame your goals as stories. Start with the problem, show the struggle, and reveal the breakthrough you want. Who are you becoming? What's at stake? Paint the emotional picture. Apple's Think Different campaign is a perfect example. It didn't just sell products, it celebrated rebels, dreamers, and misfits who changed the world. That message resonated deeply and attracted people who wanted to belong to that tribe. Are you communicating your why clearly? What story do you tell about yourself and your dreams? Is it inspiring? Does it invite others to join you? Your story is your brand. Make it authentic and powerful. Another tip: use visuals and simplicity in your messaging. Apple's ads and product designs are clean, focused, and easy to understand. Complexity confuses. simplicity clarifies and inspires action. Steve's storytelling wasn't just clever marketing. It was a genuine expression of his vision and passion. When your story comes from the heart, it moves people, and yourself. Even with incredible success, Steve Jobs faced doubt, both from others and himself. No journey toward greatness is without criticism and self-questioning. Apple's bold moves didn't please everyone. Many called Steve stubborn or reckless. Have you ever felt crushed by criticism? Or caught in the grip of your own doubts? It's normal. What matters is what you do next. Steve's story teaches that doubt can either paralyze you or propel you forward. He learned to separate destructive criticism from constructive feedback. Not everyone's opinion deserves a place in your mind. But listening to the right voices, mentors, trusted peers, helps you grow without losing confidence. Practical tip: when you hear criticism, ask, is this helpful? Does it align with my vision? What can I learn from it? Then, let go of the rest. Protect your focus and keep moving forward. Self-doubt was another battle. Steve admitted to moments when he questioned his decisions. But he didn't let fear stop him. Instead, he used it as fuel to work harder, to refine his vision, and to prepare for the next challenge. Imagine what you could do if you treated doubt like a coach, not a jailer. What small step can you take today, despite your fear? What doubts can you face head-on and refuse to let control your life? Steve's resilience wasn't magic, it was practice. Each time he fell or was doubted, he got back up, learned, and tried again. That kind of grit is within everyone's reach. Here's a question for you: what criticism or doubt is holding you back right now? How can you respond differently, more wisely and bravely? Remember, every hero's journey is full of these moments. They don't mean failure, they mean growth. Your doubts don't define you, your courage to continue does. Steve Jobs wasn't just focused on products or profits, he wanted to change the world. His vision was about creating tools that empowered people, sparked creativity, and inspired new ways of thinking. That's the legacy he aimed to leave. Have you thought about the impact you want to make? Success isn't just about personal gain, it's about how your work affects others and shapes the future. What will your story inspire in those who come after you? Steve's legacy isn't only in Apple's devices but in the culture of innovation and excellence he cultivated. He showed the world that technology could be beautiful, intuitive, and deeply human. Here's a challenge: think beyond your immediate goals. How can what you do today create positive ripples that last? What small act, decision, or project might inspire others? Legacy is built daily through your values, actions, and how you treat people. Steve's passion, persistence, and refusal to settle for less left a mark far bigger than any product launch. Practical tip: write down what you want your legacy to be in one sentence. Then ask yourself if your current actions align with that vision. Adjust if needed. Every day is a chance to build your impact. Imagine future generations remembering you not just for what you did but for why and how you did it. That's the kind of success that outlasts trends and time. Steve's journey reminds us that true triumph is about contribution, meaning, and inspiring others to dream bigger. What will your legacy say about you? Steve Jobs' story teaches us something powerful. Greatness starts with a spark, but it's built through struggle, failure, and relentless belief. From a small garage to global revolution, his journey shows what's possible when you refuse to give up. You might not be building the next Apple, but your dreams matter just as much. Maybe you're starting small, facing doubt, or struggling with setbacks. That's okay. It means you're on your own hero's journey. Visualize your future. Imagine looking back years from now, proud you didn't quit. Picture the moment when your hard work pays off. The reward isn't just success, it's growth, confidence, and impact. Remember the garage, the sleepless nights, the risks. Remember that every big success has a story of pain behind it. But pain and reward go hand in hand. One can't exist without the other. Here's the key: start now. Take that first imperfect step. Don't wait for perfect conditions or permission. Steve didn't. He chose action over comfort, belief over fear. Use these strategies. Focus on what matters, build a strong culture around your dream, learn from failure, embrace innovation, and tell your story with passion. These are the tools that built Apple, and can build your success. You have what it takes. Your story is waiting to be written. And like Steve, you can create something that changes not just your life but the lives of others.